Alright, so here going to be a quick run through of the notes for trapezoids. Since I'm not here, I'm just going to basically do a screen recording and I'll go as quickly as I possibly can so that you get the information in as short a time as possible. Alright, so we're dealing with trapezoids. You're going to have non-isosceles trapezoids and isosceles trapezoids. Biggest difference, as you can tell, is we only have one set of parallel sides for non-isosceles, and same for isosceles. However, the difference is that pair of non-parallel sides for non-isosceles, obviously those are not equal. But for isosceles, they are. And you can tell by, of course, those hash marks that symbolize that. All right, so based on those different types, you have different rules. For non-isosceles, the only thing you really have to know is only one pair of opposite sides are parallel, and then the consecutive angles between the parallel lines are supplementary, meaning this angle is supplementary to this angle. They have to add up to 180. And then this angle is supplementary to this angle. Do not try and make these two supplementary. You can't do that because these two lines are not parallel. All right, so just make sure you're going from the parallel lines. That's the biggest deal there. All right, so going through that, we'll go through some problems. Okay, for number 1. Now I see that my parallel lines are right here. That means that these two will be supplementary and these two will be supplementary. So following that, to find measure of angle K, I'm just going to have to do 180 minus 51. That's going to give me 129 degrees. For measure of angle M, I'm just going to do 180 minus 87, and that's going to give me 93 degrees. Easy and quick. All right. It's very similar for number 2, but like I said, I'm just going to give you the basic idea. So for number 2, again, here's my parallel lines. I want to do the supplementaries for these two and for these two. Okay, based off of that, measure of angle C is going to be 180 minus 31. That's going to be 149 degrees. Measure of angle D is going to be 180 minus 62. And that's going to be 118 degrees. And that's it. Okay, for 3 and 4, I'm just going to show you how to set them up. I'm not worried about the solving. You guys can practice that on the activity later. So for number 3, now notice where your parallel lines are. They're right here. So remember, you want to go in between the parallel lines for your supplementary. So if I'm looking at supplementary, I know that these two are. That means I can just say that 8x plus 6 plus 54 has to equal 180. That's what supplementary means, and you would solve from there. All right, for number 4, it's the exact same thing. These would be supplementary. You're just going to add them up to equal 180. Again, I'm not worried about solving. You'll do that later. All right, let's move on to isosceles trapezoids. Now, if you look back at the notes, there's quite a few more things you have to remember on these. And as far as the sides go, I know that DG has to be congruent to the opposite side, which in this case for this trapezoid is EF. All right, now remember, if the shape is not slanted, which technically the isosceles trapezoid is not, the diagonals would be congruent. So DF would be congruent to the other diagonal, which is, in this case, GE. You could have said EG, and you could have said FE. Doesn't matter the order, just as long as the letters are correct. All right? That's pretty straightforward. All right, now looking at the angle part here. So remember, the bottom angles or base angles are congruent, and then the upper angles are congruent, which means these two are congruent, and these two are congruent. So angle T is obviously congruent to angle U. Angle V is obviously congruent to angle W. And remember, they're isosceles trapezoids because these two sides are equal. So either I have to give you that notation with the hash marks, or I have to actually tell you. Just keep that in mind. All right, we'll do a couple with numbers, probably just one for time. So if we look at P, obviously it's got to be congruent to your other top angle, which is angle Q, making angle Q also 112 degrees. All right, the other thing you should know about the consecutive angles, which these are supplementary. They can be because these are parallel lines right here. So I just have to do 180 minus 112 to get the measure of angle S. That's going to be 68 degrees. And remember, if angle S is 68 degrees, angle R is also 68 degrees. So there's a lot of repetition there. All right, we're going to skip down. And very similar stuff here. I'm just going to set up probably just number 9 just to show you how the algebra would work. And you can solve later if you'd like, but you'll practice that on the activity. All right, we're given that MP is 16x minus 13. We're given NO is 9x plus 8. And PN, which is your diagonal, is 5y plus 19. And MO, your other diagonal, is 12y minus 37. I'm not going to put that on the picture. I just don't have the room. So solve for x and y. Just setting up, MP and NO should be congruent. So you should have 16x minus 13 is equal to 9x minus 8. Again, about the diagonals, they are congruent as well because this is not a slanted shape. It's just straight up and down. So I'm allowed to say that 5y plus 19 would be equal to 12y minus 37. And you would solve from there. All right. We're going to skip to the very next section. The algebra should be pretty easy from then on. I'm sure, hopefully, you can figure it out. I'll be back on Monday to clear up any misunderstandings if we have them. All right, midsegment of a trapezoid. This is actually fairly easy. The rule of this is obviously you've got to have your one set of parallel lines, AB and DC, and then you have what's called a midsegment. And so here's how the midsegment works. AB is parallel to DC is parallel to EF. So basically, you can add an arrow here almost because there's 3 sets of parallel lines. All right. Now, here's the rule. Basically, EF is in the middle of those two, and so what we can really say is it's the average of those two. Well, how do you find the average? You add the two and then just divide by how many you have, which in this case would just be the 2 lines. So in this case, EF is actually going to be equal to your 2 outer segments, AB plus DC, and then you just divide by how many you have, and you only have the 2 segments that you're adding. So you're just taking the average of the smallest segment and the largest segment and cutting it in half. That'll give you the middle, which just makes sense. All right, 1 through 4 are very straightforward. I'm not going to really go through those with you. I'd rather just kind of stick with the algebra. So we're going to skip down to number 5. And we'll make this as quick as possible. All right, so first off, remember, your midsegment has to equal the longest and shortest added together divided by 2. So in this case, your midsegment is 5x minus 19. That means that your longest segment and shortest segment have to add together, so x plus 14 plus 38, and then you just divide it by 2. All right, now we can do some simplification before we do anything else. So I'm going to do 5x minus 19 and keep that. Now, right here, I know I can combine 14 and 38, and you could have done that before this, but I'm just going to write all the steps out. So when you do that, you're going to have technically x plus 52 over 2. All right, now to get the x plus 52 kind of by itself, we want to kind of get rid of that dividing by 2. So I'm going to multiply everything by 2. So I'm going to multiply this side by 2 and this side by 2. Now keep in mind, the entire 5x minus 19 must be multiplied by 2. You're going to have to distribute it. Just don't forget that part. And when you multiply by 2 on the right side, that's going to cancel this fraction out. So you're going to be left with it equal to x plus 52. 2 times 5 is 10x, and 2 times negative 19 is a negative 38. Now from there, you're just going to solve. So when you subtract x and add 38, I'm going to carry on over here. You're going to get that 9x is equal to 90. And when you divide, of course, x is equal to 10. Now, that is your x value. I wanted yz. And remember, yz is your 5x minus 19. So I'm just going to do 5 times 10 minus 19. And that's going to give you 31 as your answer. Okay? We'll do one more. You can stop now if you think you have the algebra and do the activity. If you want one more, I'm going to do number 6 as well. All right. Same thing. In this case, my midsegment is 25, and I need to set it equal to 2x plus 11 plus 6x minus 1 and divide by 2. So that means 25 is going to be equal to the 6 plus the 2 is going to give you 8x. And 11 minus 1 is going to give you a positive 10, and you'll still divide by 2. This one's a little easier because we don't have as much algebra on the side. I still need to get rid of the divide by 2, so I'm going to multiply by 2. So we get 50 is equal to, when the 2's cancel, 8x plus 10. When I subtract 10 from both sides, I'm going to get 40 is equal to 8x. And when I divide, 5 will equal x. Again, be careful of what I'm asking you for. I want kj, which if we remember is 6x minus 1. So I'll do 6 times 5 minus 1. 30 minus 1 is obviously 29. All right, once you feel like you've understood this, go ahead and get the sheet from the sub. Make sure you put as much work as you can, and if there's anything that we don't understand or that you need me to go over, I will happily do that on Monday. All right, guys, have a great weekend.